Hey everybody, you're in the right place. This is Kevin Ormond, Conversations with Kevin with a C, bringing you common sense leadership principles for the 21st century. And today, we've got some very interesting things going on. First of all, we've got the, we had Constitution Day yesterday, 232 years since they signed it. It actually went into effect March the 4th of 2 years later. So about 230 years and about 6 months ago. So it has been going. And my book, The Constitution of a Great Leader, I took a look at those leadership principles. I've been working for 230 years. Said, hey, incorporate them into your own Constitution because they work. And so that's what that one's about. Well, today we got another anniversary to talk about. And that's the 72nd anniversary of the creation of the U.S. Air Force. Now, I was in the Air Force. Back during Vietnam, I won the draft lottery. It's the only lottery I've ever won. And I got an all-expense-paid trip into the military, whether I wanted one or not. And I also learned a valuable lesson. Never play the lottery. I've never bought a lottery ticket, not even one. So anyway, I mean, it's a tax on the foolish anyway. But the bottom line to that thing is I have not done that. However, when the Air Force, was the Army Air Corps prior to that. And so what they did, and this is the joke, and those of you that have been in the military will get it, we joke back and forth between one another. And so what happened was back then in 47, 1947, they gave everybody in the Army an IQ test. And if you scored over 60, they said, welcome to the Air Force. So basically that's how that works. And that's the joke that we always tell. But one of the many, that's one of the clean ones. And so there are others that aren't repeatable over the air. They would, they're not nice. But there are others that are nice too. So it's all good. Anyhow, that's another thing that we're celebrating is that all of these things that are part of the greatness of this country that we live in, and the phenomenal opportunities that are here. We see all this negative crap from the mainstream media and all these other kinds of things that we see. John Stossel, who I met a couple months ago, when I was speaking down at Freedom Fest down in Las Vegas, he was as well, and he had a video that came out yesterday that talked about how much good is going on in this country that doesn't get reported by the mainstream media. And there's no question about it. They're all tied up in politics and all these other kinds of things. It's a crazy deal. You see, politics is like a Ferris wheel. It goes round and round with flashing lights and loud music. It's captivating to watch, but it never goes anywhere. It consumes lots of energy and in the end makes you want to throw up. That's pretty much what politics is about. They spend too much time doing exactly nothing and except stirring the pot and not really accomplishing too much. And so I guess that's the good news in some ways. What they do accomplish, unfortunately, is wasting a lot of money that our great-grandchildren or grandchildren are going to have to pay back. So I'm not too pleased about that. That's about all I'm going to say about that. But one of the essential functions in the Constitution is defending us. And so things like the Air Force and stuff are an essential portion of what we need. And that's all part of the game. So that being said, I've got a wonderful guest today. He's a good friend and a good man. He's has overcome some very interesting things, and I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about it as we go. This guy's name is Jeff Steinberg, and so Jeff, are you there?
Hey, that's me. But who's the wonderful guest you're going to have?
Well, that'll be next.
Listen, what can I say?
Yeah, buddy. Jeff and I met on a cruise ship, a mastermind cruise, a few months ago, and I want to say fell in love, but it would give you the wrong impression. But we we sure got along well, and we sure like each other a lot.
No, I think it's an appropriate description,
Okay.
because I think falling in love has little to do with the erotic and more to do with the relationship and the friendship.
Yeah, and I think so too, buddy. And I think that the key here is that the more I got to know this guy, the better I liked him. And he's a good human being. He's a smart guy. He's a great entertainer. Guy can sing like nobody's business, and in fact made his living doing that for a while, and has done a number of other things. So Jeff has an interesting story, and I'll let him come in with his story now. Of course, you can't see him, and so he'll describe a little bit about that as well. So take it away. Take it away, Jeff.
I want to mention to you, before you get too far afield, my father was in the Army Air Corps.
Yeah.
And so I salute everyone who has served, but especially those who were part of the Army Air Corps back in the day. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I had an uncle who flew P-51s and got a couple of distinguished flying crosses for shooting down Stukas on D-Day. So yeah, I get it. Go ahead.
I am probably a most unique individual in terms of what you see, because I was born 68 years ago with no arms and malformed legs. I was born with what the doctors call phocoemycelia, which is just a fancy doctor word for congenital birth defects. But to use the phrase birth defects suggests that baby who has all these things going against him, they didn't think I was going to live. My legs were kind of crisscrossed, kind of like an Indian sits in a powwow, and there was nothing but a little stump for a right arm and nothing but a shoulder bone for the left arm. And they weren't expecting me to live anyway. To suggest that child was had birth defects, and the word defects suggesting that I was defective. And I don't know that if I were allowed to be born today, that I would have been allowed to be born today under today's attitudes. But my mother did not know about my disability till I was 17 months old. She learned about it from my grandmother, and she didn't see me for the first time until I was almost 2 years old in a children's welfare shelter in Philadelphia. My mom, my dad, my grandmother came to visit, and my mother picked me up and held me for what seemed like a long time, back and forth, and she paced the floor with me in her arms, and then she placed me back in my crib, turned to my father, and said, "Irving, take me home. I'm ready to leave now." It was very difficult. My father thought he was protecting my mother by not telling her, and all he did was cheated her out of what she needed to overcome the obstacles that would later become really bigger obstacles in her life, and that is dealing with a child that needed to be bathed, to be dressed, to be all the things that kids learn to do for themselves. And I only got to live at home for a very short period of my life, about 9 months, before I was placed into foster care with a family that had a daughter with cerebral palsy. It was after about that 9 months, I was told that my father was going to pick me up. And I thought, great, I'm going to get to go home. I'm going to be a brother to 3 sisters. I'm going to be a son and a grandson. And what I found out was my father was going to drive me on Halloween Day, 1960, 63 miles away to the Good Shepherd home for kids with disabilities and old people in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And I would live there. I would go to school from there. I would graduate from high school, and a lot of my formations would come from what would happen while I was living at Good Shepherd. both spiritual and physical and emotional. And I graduated with a class of 771. But what I learned in my life, and the principle that became the founding principle in my life, is that I, Jeff Steinberg, regardless of what I look like, I, Jeff Steinberg, am fearfully and wonderfully made. God makes no mistakes. And that became a resounding theme in my life. Years later, in college, I met a young man who was a keyboard player and a songwriter and a tenor singer, and we partnered up, and he became a songwriter for me for a lot of the music I sing, and he penned a song called Masterpiece in Progress, which became my theme song. And Masterpiece in Progress is about looking at your life in terms of the colors that blend and the colors that don't blend, and getting a chance to see the bigger picture. And he saw what I could be, that God who made me saw what I could be, and that it was bigger than the disabilities and bigger than my circumstance. I started singing, I started traveling. I did a lot of my early years in churches and ministry organizations. And then around 1979, around the mid 80s rather, I appeared with Zig Ziglar on a multi-level stage. And people started to tell me that I had a message that needed to be reached out beyond the doors of ministry and churches and that sort of thing. That there were people who were giving up on themselves. There were kids who were finding it hard to look at themselves and appreciate what they had. That motivation is about knowing who you are and what you have to offer. And if you don't like who you are, nobody's going to want what you have to offer. And that's the thing. So I've been out on the road for 46 years. I've stood on stages with tens of thousands of people. I've stood in boardrooms with 10, and been on radio programs with incredible people like Kevin with a C, and Brad over there staring at me and smiling and waving. And I never dreamed I'd get a chance to be, on a cruise ship with entrepreneurs and millionaires and businessmen and be able to inspire them, because, an excuse is a lie. It's a lie we tell ourselves to make it okay not to move forward. And the truth is, I believe that a handicap, that an excuse can be that handicap. We all live by choices, and the choices we make, I can't do a thing about my physical appearance. And if there's a problem with the way I look, it's your problem, not mine, because I'm okay with it. But the truth is, I can't do anything about the way I was born, but I can choose not to be handicapped by it. I can choose to allow my circumstance to refine me and not define me. I can choose to allow my story to get me further and keep me going. Or I can choose to let it all handicap me and stop me, because a true handicap is anything that keeps me from being or becoming all that I am created to be.
Thank you, Jeff. That's so true. And while you were speaking, one quick thing that crossed my mind is we can either make excuses or we can make progress, but you can't make both. Right. And there's so much truth to that. Listen, we're going to go to a break right now, and when we come back, we'll have more with Jeff Steinberg.
Hello, my friends. This is Brad Neufeld, host of the Five Kingdoms radio show right here on the Tribe of Kings Information Network. Be sure and tune in weekly to hear the latest and greatest on the Tribe of Kings, and also to learn all those things that you need to do to be the best that you can be.
Hello, I want to take this time to say thank you for tuning in and listening to the Tribe of Kings Information Network. My name is Jay Carlton, and I am the host of The Jay Carlton Show. On my show, I will be talking about the world of insurance, starting with what I like to call the 5 cores of insurance. This is whenever I'm sitting down with others, and these are the 5 top things that they always want to talk about. Come on in, take a listen.
Hello everyone, my name is Jay Walter, host of Rebuilding, a radio show right here on the Tribe of Kings Information Network. Be sure to tune in weekly to hear more about the Tribe of Kings and to learn how to overcome fear and rebuild your life every day as you become the man you want to be.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Kevin Ormond, Kevin with a C, bringing you common sense leadership principles for the 21st century. And we're talking with Jeff Steinberg, and he gave us his story in the last segment. Like I say, I've known Jeff for a number of months, not as long as I would have liked to, because the more I know him, the better I like him. But the thing that I like about this whole process is that, doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter where you come from, leadership affects everything. And we're all leaders. Most of us are lousy ones, but we're all leaders. Part of the reason we're lousy ones is because so few people are good leaders that all the examples of leadership we see are lousy. And so that's part of the problem that we have to overcome. So we're going to talk a little bit about how leadership principles play into what goes on with what Jeff does and all the rest of what we do, all of us, because you're a leader, good or bad. So you probably ought to think about improving your skills. Because the better at it you are, the better everything in your life works, the better your business works, the better your family works, the better your relationships work, the better everything works. And so,
and you know why? And you know why that is, Kevin?
Go ahead.
Because everybody's watching you.
Yes.
So if you lead well, they notice.
You know what's
if you lead poorly, they notice.
You know what's fascinating about that? It's so true. I have a unique gift. When things are crazy and they're going sideways, I'm the guy who you want to have around because I keep my head in emergencies. So an example, a number of years ago, my business was a little slow, so I picked up a part-time job delivering pizzas for Domino's. And one night, the guy who owned the coin shop next door, I'm heading out there with an armful of pizzas, heading out to deliver them. The guy who owns the coin shop next door comes. He's holding his forehead, bleeding all over the place. He says, "I've been shot." And so I drop the pizzas. I set him in the corner, and I start barking orders. I tell the store manager. Call 911, and I tell the other driver that I can see, bring me a bunch of napkins, and so on and so forth. I set him down, and I start doing basic triage with the guy to see how badly hurt he is. And fortunately for him, what had happened is this guy had been coming in there pretending to be a customer casing the joint for a while, and comes in with a .38 and pops him right between the eyes. Well, he sees it coming and tilts his head back, and so the slug went in under the skin, skittered over the skull under the skin and out through the top of the scalp, but never penetrated the skull. Well, scalp wounds bleed like crazy, and so there's blood everywhere. The guy goes down. He's still conscious. He has presence of mind to play dead so the guy doesn't shoot him again. The guy robs the place and leaves. Then he comes over, and I'm the first person he encounters. Well, so anyway, I handle all this kind of stuff, and then finally here come the paramedics. You know, when seconds count, help is minutes away. So but they finally show up. Cops show up, all this kind of stuff. And the paramedics come in. I give them a rundown of what I'd seen, what I'd done, and what had happened, and what I observed and that kind of thing. And then they take over. So then I just go over and pick up my pizzas and head out the door and step over the cables from all the TV trucks that are there by then and all this stuff. Go out and deliver my pizzas, right? But here's my point. My point is, who am I? In that environment, I'm just one of the hired help. Okay, but because I step out and take charge, everybody follows. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so this goes back to what you were saying. Everybody is looking for somebody to step out that they can follow, and if they trust that person. If that person seems confident, if that person has a vision, if that person has the skills to enroll them in the process so that they can see that their goals are the same as the goals of the organization or the meeting or the emergency situation, whatever it happens to be, then they're going to just fall in line and follow. And that's precisely what happened in that circumstance, and it happens everywhere, even in, of course, non-emergency circumstances.
But what's characteristic about the word leadership is, and that is the word lead.
Yep.
And not boss.
That's correct.
And the thing of it is, what a lot of people will see is that if you are leading, guess what? You're going to be out there in the front. You were there doing triage.
That's right.
That qualified you to get help, to tell them what to do so that you could continue to do what you needed to do.
That's right.
And that's key, because a lot of times we think leadership is about, it's about the skill set we have. If you do this, and this, that'll make you a leader. No. Mm-hmm. Or giving orders, and that only makes you a boss.
Yeah, well, there's a I talk about this extensively in most of my books, certainly in my newest one. But there's a huge difference between management and leadership. Yeah. You see, unfortunately, the school system that we have trains us in things that happen in your head, that happen between the ears. Leadership doesn't work that way. Leadership, you got to keep your head about you, but it happens in the heart. And right. So you see, and it's a balance between the head and the heart. So you've got to keep your head, but you also have to lead with your heart. And this is key because absent that, you see, you don't see a good leader. You feel them. You feel a bad one too. And that's so key. So what's going on there is you're actually it's experiential. So back to management. Management works great if you're managing things. I manage a project. I manage time. I manage money. I manage whatever. But when you try to manage living, thinking, breathing, emotionally driven, as we all are, human beings, it doesn't work. And so I call that, certainly a boss is someone who's trying to manage people rather than lead them. And I think, and that doesn't work. And unfortunately, that's what's taught in the schools, because that's the only thing they can easily measure. And because things that are learned experientially, things that are emotionally based, aren't measurable in the same way. And worse yet, we don't have the language for them, because they happen in the limbic system of the brain, where there's no language to really describe it. And so we talk around it and at it, but we really can't describe it. And so it's felt and it's communicated, through body language and other things much more effectively than it is through words. So that goes right down the line of that this idea that you're talking about, a boss is someone who's trying to manage people, and that doesn't work.
That becomes manipulation.
Totally. Yeah. Now here's the problem. Okay, leadership has three basic components. I talk about the three C's. Kevin with a C makes sense, right? First one is character. That's number one. That's all important. You've got to keep developing your character every day. The second one is conduct, which flows from character. Now, you can fake conduct for a while if you got crummy character, but eventually it shows up. And then the third one is charisma. Charisma is your ability to connect with and communicate with other people. And so, of those three, the one that's the most visible is charisma. And so people think that somebody with charisma is a good leader or a great leader, and they elect them and they find out that they're a bozo or whatever, and or whatever it happens to be. You got one of the greatest examples of charisma that the world's ever seen, that one of the best public speakers the world's ever seen is Adolf Hitler. Look at YouTube and watch 1 million people screaming bloody murder because he's just got them all riled up and so excited and everything else. They say it was electric to be in his presence, but, horrible, abhorrent character, abhorrent behavior, 55 million at least dead because of that knucklehead. So, you're talking somebody who doesn't have that charisma or has the charisma but doesn't have the rest of it. So that doesn't make a leader either. Because those people then can utilize that charisma to manipulate. I can use it to lead for your benefit or manipulate you for mine.
For sure. I believe that I think that if we really want to be a good leader, we have to ask ourselves some basic questions. And see, that's the problem. Our friend Roger Salam, Kevin, said that the truly great leader is not the guy with all the answers, but the guy who knows what questions to ask.
Yep, that's right.
And the fact of the matter is, you have to ask yourself some basic questions.
Yep.
All right. Who am I? I told you my story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a guy with no arms that nobody expected would ever be outside of an institution for kids with disabilities. And yet I'm married. I have 4 children. I have 9 grandchildren. I travel all over the world speaking and singing. And oh, by the way, I also drive Uber and Lyft.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I usually wait to tell my riders that I don't have any arms until I'm doing about 50. That way, if they decide to jump out of the car, it has an impact.
Sure. Got to get that fare, buddy. Got to get that fare.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it's about knowing who I am.
Sure.
And knowing who you are.
Sure.
Knowing that what I look like is not going to stop me from being what I know I can be.
Sure.
And I think we have gotten the idea that leadership and success is all about skill set.
Yeah.
I can tell you that in Washington, D.C., there are a whole bunch of people with all kinds of skill sets that are idiots.
Oh, you've noticed?
Yeah.
Really?
And they're not very good
Amazing.
leaders.
No, they're not.
Yeah. By the way, you mentioned politics. A tick is a blood-sucking creature, and poly means many.
That's fact. No doubt. No doubt. So true. So true. But,
my point is, you got to ask yourself the right questions.
Yes.
Who
absolutely.
am I?
Yeah.
Second question, what drives me? What's my passion?
Yep.
Talk about your abilities, but you also have to talk about your disabilities, your limitations.
That's right.
The things that I cannot do are as important as the things that I can.
Well, they tell me what I have to hire.
Right.
See, because I can't do it all, I don't possess all skills. And so the ones that I don't, that become necessary to reaching my goals and dreams, I have to hire.
Exactly. I have to ask for help. I will never be able to give myself a bath. I will never be able to, I'll never be a basketball player and slam dunk,
Sure.
even though I got a great hook shot.
I'll bet.
I'm referring to the hook that
I know what you're referring to. Maybe our listeners don't.
You would, but I wanted the radio people.
Yeah, clarify it for the listeners.
Yeah,
exactly.
I had a 5-year-old that asked me, he wanted to know why I didn't have any hands. I told him I used to bite my fingernails, and one day I went too far.
It's so totally true.
He's in trauma therapy.
Yeah, I know. Well, I was telling you on the break that I guess I've always wanted to be in radio because when I was a little kid, my grandparents had one of these great big old Ford Philco radios about the size of a dishwasher. And I remember pulling that thing out from the wall when I was a little guy and crawling inside it to hide. And so I guess I've always wanted to be in the radio. And then, I guess, when I was little and bad, and rather they wanted to confine me, they put me on top of the radio so that it was too far down, and I couldn't. So I was always on the radio. So I was either in the radio or on the radio. I don't know which, but it's so totally true. It's so totally true. These kids.
Anyway,
go ahead.
So anyway, so that takes you to your third question. Why am I here?
Yeah.
I mean, and I told you when I was on the cruise about a gentleman I encountered when I was at a prison in England.
Mm-hmm.
And I came down the aisle and I was singing this song, and there's a line in the song says, you got to fight a little harder, you got to push a little more. And the guy looked just like a twin brother to the actor, the late Michael Clark Duncan. I mean, the guy had arms the size of tree trunks.
Oh yeah, that dude was 6'5". He was a monster. He's big.
Yeah, and
big
he was
man.
looking at me, and he gave me this look like, "Don't even think about it." So I didn't even think about it. I just came right up to him and started pushing on him, and and I realized pretty quickly it wasn't going to end well for me.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, after what seemed like forever, this huge grin came across his face.
Yeah.
And a voice in my head said, "Got you."
Uh-huh.
And he looked at me. At the end of the thing, I did something I almost never do anymore, is I threw it open for questions.
Sure.
And he raised his hand, and I ignored him and looked somewhere else because I really didn't want to get involved with him. But I finally did, and he looked at me and he said, "Why are you here?"
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I gave him the standard answer because it was a chapel service. So
Yeah.
it was a religious experience. And so I told him I came to tell you that God knows and cares about you. And he said, no. Why are you in this prison, in my prison?
Yeah.
And I had literally an instant to have to come up with an answer. And I looked and I said, "Sir," I said, "look over your left shoulder." I said, "You see that window behind you with the bars?" "Yes." And everybody turned their head. I said, "Do you see that razor wire wrapped around the barbed wire fence on the other side of the window with the bars?" "Yes." I said, "In about 45 minutes, I'm going to be on the other side of that fence and you're still going to be here." I said, "So I'm going to be real honest with you. I'm here to tell you that you can go back to your 12 by 12 cell and you can look in the mirror above the sink next to the toilet in your 12 by 12 cell, and you never have to see the guy that got you into this mess again. That you can see a masterpiece, that you can see the person you want to be, that there is redemption for you. Even if you think you're a criminal, and even if you are a criminal, you can see a masterpiece. Why are you here?" I sang at a school in Pennsylvania years ago, and a lady wrote me a letter and said, "You saved my life. You sang in a school that my son was in on a day that I was considering suicide because his father and I had a fight. And we came to the concert that night, and you looked at me." We all have a purpose. We all have something we're supposed to be doing. And that something is about making a difference, and leadership is about that.
Perfect. So as we go to another break here, Jeff, we'll come back with Jeff Steinberg here pretty quickly, and we'll just move on from there.
Hello, my friends. This is Brad Neufeld of The Brad Neufeld Show right here on Five Kingdoms Radio. Tune in Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time to hear tips and strategies on how to overcome the challenges of life. You'll be glad you did.
You are listening to Five Kingdoms Radio, where we inspire you to organize and align your life so that you can build a better you, a better family, and become a better friend and associate so that you can ultimately bless the world. If these are your goals and you want to help us build this life-changing network, we invite you to become a sponsor or advertise on our station. For more information on this amazing opportunity, please contact us at fivekingdomsradio.com.
And we're back. Kevin Ormond here, Conversations with Kevin with a C, bringing you common sense leadership principles for the 21st century. We're here with Jeff Steinberg, and been talking about a number of very interesting ideas with this process. I'm just gonna open up an idea for you here, Jeff. What would you say in terms of your leadership, and what has helped you to become a leader? What do you think about leadership, and how that's applied to you in your situation?
My father always used to tell me when I was little, never say I can't until you try. Now, to tell you the truth, Kevin, you and I talked about this. I don't know if he actually believed it.
Yeah.
But he told me, he'd say, Jeffrey, never say I can't until you try, because the difficult we do right away. The impossible takes a little longer.
Yep.
And I've always been about, Dexter Yeager, who is one of the biggest crown directs in Amway.
Yep. I know who Dexter is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he used to tell audiences, don't let anybody steal your dream.
Yep.
And yet all of my life, my mother, other family members, friends would always tell me, but you can't do this, and they would remind me of the things I couldn't
watch
do.
Me.
Yeah. And that was
that just I don't know, pisses me off, and so I'm ready to go, man. You just watch me. Yeah,
sure.
You think, right?
I told him I was going to drive a car.
Yeah.
I wanted to drive a car in the worst kind of way. And if you ask anybody who has traveled with me down through
that's how you drive.
That's how I drive.
Sorry to steal your punchline, but that one was too good.
I walked into the state troopers barracks, laid my learner's permit on the table after having to go through a senator and the State Department of Transportation in Pennsylvania just to get a learner's permit.
Right.
And I laid my learner's permit on the table, and I said, here I am. And I literally watched the color drain from the trooper's face as he realized, as he looked at the list, that he was next on that list. And he was going to have to ride with me.
Sure.
So we did all the tests and everything. And then we drove out, we did the U-turn and the K-turn and the serpentine and all that stuff. And then we went out on US 22. Now, anybody in Pennsylvania knows US 22 is one of the most dangerous highways in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And, short entrance and exit ramps. If you're not doing 65 by the time your nose gets on, you will be by the time your rear end gets on.
Sure.
Yeah, And so we drove all around the city, got back, and as we pulled back in, I looked over at him and I said, well, did I pass? Did I pass? Did I pass? And he looked over at me, and in very Nixon-esque fashion, he said, passed. And then I realized as he was getting out of the car, so did he. There was a spot on my suit.
I hear you.
And here's the thing. My mother told me when she found out I was going to get my driver's license that she would never ride with me.
Uh-huh.
Because she didn't think I should be able to drive a car.
Sure.
Because I don't have any arms or hands.
Sure.
Years later, my wife and I invited them to come to our house for Christmas along with her mother. And my stepdad, because my father had died when in 1981, my stepdad said, oh, no, we'll ride with you. And my mother looked up at him and then said, oh, yeah, we'll ride with you. And since then, she's been riding with me. But her comment to me was, well, you must be very proud. course, I just kind of let her have her moment. And I said, well, yeah, I'm glad you came to visit. No, she said, proud that I'm riding in the same car that you're driving. And I said, well, that too. The point is, I wasn't going to let anybody keep me from being independent and keep me from doing what it is I came to do, and driving a car is important to me.
Sure it is. It's important to everybody. It's freedom. It's, I remember as a 15-year-old with a learner's permit, I remember that to me it was freedom. And of course, small town, I'd been driving tractors and pickups out in the fields and stuff like that since I could reach the pedals at about 10. So, when it came around to actually getting the driver's license and all that kind of stuff, it was more of a formality.
Sure.
Learner's permit and all, my folks would send me off to the store once in a while by myself and things like that. And it just went on and on. But I was living in northern Utah in a small town at the time. The day after my 16th birthday, which is, of course, when you could get your driver's license back then, we moved to Idaho. Well, in Idaho at that time, you could get a driver's license at 14 for daylight only. I think there's still some of that in their laws up there. I'm not sure exactly what it is because I haven't looked at it for years. But and then when you turn 16, it became a 24-hour license because you they needed kids to drive spud trucks in the fields during harvest and stuff like that. Everybody in the family has to help, and so they had this 14-year-old daylight only license, and so I'm all excited to get my driver's license and everything else. And then I moved to Idaho, and it's kind of anticlimactic because all my friends had a license for 2 years all of a sudden, right? So, but I never had a daylight only license. Mine was only a 24-hour license from the first time I had one.
And you see, the whole world is just standing in line waiting to crush your dreams.
Oh,
to remind you of
you've
what
noticed. You've noticed. It's the crabs in the crab bucket. You know that story, right? And you don't have to have a lid on a bucket of crabs. All you have to have is 2 or more crabs in the bucket, because when one tries to crawl out, the other's dragging back down. And so you can keep them there in an open top bucket, and they'll never leave. That's so true. And people don't understand, I think, or maybe they do, but some do certainly, that a dream is a foundational element of leadership. You've got to have a dream. You've got to say, here's what I want. Here's what I want to accomplish. Here's what I want to do in the world. Here's what I want to do with this organization. Here's what I want to do with this whatever. And you've got to have a dream about that. And then you've got to be tenacious and hold on to that dream. Now, that's the part of the leadership equation that is essential, because then as you develop the charisma, your ability to connect and communicate, what happens is you can then take that and that passion that you feel for that dream, that vision, and enroll out there. You've got to learn how to tell the stories in such a way that people go, wow, I want to be part of that. That sounds so fun. That sounds so cool. That sounds so exciting. That's something that just, pulls my heartstrings. That's something that I want to be part of. And, and then, other leadership skills then are part of that from there. But absent that, you've got to be able to have that, because absent that, it's all just going through the motions. Exactly.
We were talking earlier about, why am I here? And there's only 2 other questions that I want to put forth that anybody would even think about. And the 4th question is, what are my limits?
Yeah.
Because there's a difference and a distinction between limitations and limits.
Yeah.
The limitations are the things I cannot do.
Right.
The limits are the things I will not do.
That's right.
And again, I mentioned life is about the choices we make.
Mm-hmm.
My limits are the boundaries that keep me from having to go back and fix what I shouldn't have broken in the first place.
Well, this goes right back to what I said earlier, and that is that the number one part of leadership has to do with character. And character is knowing and choosing and establishing those limits and then sticking with them.
Sure. How many of us have heard somebody say, I would do anything for the gig, or I would do anything to get the raise?
Mm-hmm.
There are things I won't do. I
Absolutely.
won't sacrifice my good name, my morals, my reputation, my own character. I won't sacrifice my family, not even for $1.
Yeah, I hear you.
And that's gotten me into some trouble, because the truth is, there are people who probably won't book me because of things that I won't do or promote or advocate.
Sure.
I won't promote right, and I won't promote something that's wrong.
Sure. I hear you. Well, that is such an important part of this whole situation, because you've got to be able to draw and hold those lines.
And then, oh, by the way, we were talking about politics.
Yeah.
I got called one time to do an event, a rally.
Yeah.
And we won't mention the name of the political group. But I told them, I said, yeah, I'd love to do it. I said, I've always wanted to sing and speak for a group that was much more handicapped than and I figured politicians qualify.
Sure.
I didn't get the gig.
Why not?
I can't imagine why.
Yeah.
Yeah. The final question, and the most important: what kind of a mark will I leave behind for having been here?
Right.
Now, I'm not talking about when they open the box and you look at me and you say, "Doesn't he look like himself?" By the way, I'm putting a sign on the hinge of my casket so that it says, "Don't I look like myself?" So everybody doesn't have to worry about asking the question.
Right.
It's there.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, every single day, we leave a mark on somebody.
Yep.
That prisoner, I went back 5 years later to that prison, and I found out that he had 8 weeks left on his sentence. And I found out 5 years after I had been there that first time that he made a commitment to faith that day. And all he talked about for that 8 weeks was the little man with no arms that got in his face and changed his life.
Yeah.
And I said, and the chaplain looked at me and said, but that's not the best part of the story. He left that prison, went back to Nigeria, and became a pastor.
Cool.
What kind of a mark will you leave behind for having been here?
Yeah.
Whose life will you touch today? Whose life will you touch tomorrow? Whose life will you help change and influence down the road? Hey, if a little man with no arms, 4 feet 6 inches tall, and mangled, malformed legs can do it, you can do it, and you've got no excuse. And you can keep telling yourself the lie that I don't have what it takes, and I'm not good enough, and
I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too fat,
Yeah.
I'm too tall, I'm too ugly,
That's right.
I'm too whatever. Yeah.
That's right. My ears stick out. My nose is too big. I've got freckles. I've got zits. My freckles have zits.
I hear you.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah.
You can tell yourself that, or you can get you can get with it and start doing something. In the Shawshank Redemption,
Mm-hmm.
Morgan Freeman's character, Red, says, "You get busy living, or you get busy dying."
Yeah.
So it's about the choices we make.
It is.
And I'm a masterpiece in progress. I'm not finished yet. I'm going to be what he designed for me to be. And you can too.
Well, and that's the reality, is we are all masterpieces in progress.
That's right.
And I think that's the core of the more I know you, Jeff, I think that's the core not only of who you are, but to help us understand that that's who we are too. And I think that is talk about a place where we need to be led. Is the noise and the nonsense between our ears, right? That tells us things other than that. So this has been great, Jeff. Listen, thank you so much for coming on. Tell us.
Hey, if anybody wants to get a hold of me,
Yeah, tell us that.
Can I do that?
That's what I was going to ask you.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
go.
right. All right. Visit jeffsteinberg.net. That's Jeff, Jeff Steinberg, STEINBERG.net. For any corporate convention, schools, prisons, awards dinners, fundraisers, all that sort of stuff. You can call me at 901-230-JEFF or 230-5333, area code 901, or booking, BOOKING, at jeffsteinberg.net.
There you go. Okay, listen, thanks, Jeff. And of course, we both speak and both go around and inspire people and do it in our own.
Get together soon, Kevin.
You know, we need to. I'll tell you, we've talked about sharing a stage, buddy. We need to do this. We need to quit talking, and we need to actually do one. We do.
We could be the new Arnold and Danny, the twins.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. We could do that, or what came to my mind was Mutt and Jeff. It's about the same idea.
Well, just remember that Jeff was the short guy.
That's right. There you go. Well, that way we'll be able to keep that straight because I'm 6'2". I'm 6'2", so we'll be able to. You think they'll be able to tell us apart?
I don't know.
I think Arnold is about 6'2", and Danny is about 4'10". So that's about right. Yeah, I think that works. All right. Hey, listen. Thanks a lot, Jeff.
Thanks for having me. This has been wonderful.
Oh, absolutely. And for everybody else out there, this is Kevin Ormond, and lead on with truth, folks. And we'll see you on the flip side.